I recently read a script that was written by a person who was something of a bystander to a national tragedy. Their participation in the event, even though they were largely a spectator to the events around them, clearly traumatized them. And it was evident from early on this writer was using the script to work out some of their own issues. There was unfortunately a very big problem with it. It wasn't very good at all. There was no structure, the character development was all on the nose, the dialogue was overwrought, and there were a lot of extraneous little subplots. While they weren't strongly related to the national incident, I'd bet they were taken straight from the writer's life. This was one coverage write-up where I actually felt sorry for the individual I was passing on, and hoped and prayed they would never see my one-page write-up that pointed out every single major flaw. It's sometimes hard for me to be dismissive of a script that so clearly has great emotional meaning for its writer. This writer was clearly dealing with some issues, and while I often joke I'd love to recommend therapy for those writers who have violent fixations on disemboweling people, this was a case where I wish I could recommend therapy just so this person could begin the healing process they clearly need. But at the end of the day, my job is to say what's good and what's bad. And this was bad. Very, very bad. Unfortunately, that's not too unusual with the therapy scripts I've seen. I'm sure there are plenty of good scripts that have been inspired by a writer's bad relationships and emotional hardships. Look at Forgetting Sarah Marshall, which Jason Segel says was inspired by a bad breakup he had. And if you listen to the commentary track, you get a feeling that both the writing of the script and the recording of the commentary were extended therapy sessions for him. Consider how songwriters like Alanis Morissette have built careers around their bad breakups and horrible lovers. There are always great stories to be found in personal events. But at the end of the day, even though it's a story from your life, it still has to work as a movie. There needs to be structure, and you need to be able to develop the you character objectively. Bad therapy scripts usually present the protagonist as the victim of a cruel and indifferent world that's against them. Why does all this stuff happen to me, the character whines. Nothing is their fault. Stuff just sort of happens to them. That sort of rage against the world might be enough fodder for a 3-minute song, but the pity party gets old after 10 pages. If you need to write these stories as a way of dealing with whatever trauma is bothering you, that's fine and good. Indulge your creativity, but think long and hard before sending that baby out into the world. Taking criticism is hard enough when the story is just something you made up. It's excruciating when those notes are taking aim at real events you lived through, and the character is acting as your avatar in that script. Basically, don't send that script out while you have an emotional attachment to it. Another thing to be aware of. When I started reading scripts about 10 years ago, there were a ton of 9/11 stories in the slush pile. Over the next few years, I read a lot of them set in New York on September 11th. I'm sure that happens with every national tragedy, and unfortunately, few of these scripts had a truly interesting take on the incident. Most of the time, the story was about an average Joe who was in the wrong place at the wrong time on that day and had their life imperiled 5 or 6 times. Unfortunately, most of those writers usually skimped on making their protagonist all that interesting and merely used them as a chess piece to move across the game board that was the historical events. Therapy writing might be good for you, but such a script would not be the first one I'd send out to that Hollywood contact you have, especially if you haven't had a few dispassionate readers vet it first. If you have questions, leave them for me in comments. Don't forget to subscribe. We'll see you back here next week.